Welcome everybody to another edition of Koopafantasy. I am of course Koopafantasy. This is my Week 15 Sit 'em Stardom video. If you want to read the article, you can find my blog online, Koopafantasy.com. That's Koopa fantasy.com. Also, you guys can follow me on Twitter @Blackie_Mike, Blackie with the IE at the end. Blackie_Mike. Once again, at Twitter, it's the easiest way to keep up with me. Find out when my posts are being released. Just ask me questions through the week. Because I'm very active on there. And finally, like and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube, because of course that all helps me out. And like I said before, it's my Week 15 Sit 'em Stardom video. Let's get right into it, because there's lots of players on my posts recently, trying to get more expansive with it, not just have 7 players on each side. I'm getting closer to about 10 sits, 10 starts every week. So let's get right into it, so it's not so long-winded. Alright, starting off starts, got QB, Cam Newton. As a guy who, for me, after a weak start to the season, kind of was usually floating around the 12, 13, 14 QB range, and in a 12-team standard league, which is most common. When you're 13 and 14, you're not really a starting QB. But this week, Cam Newton is easily inside of the top 12. He's versus San Diego. He's had a couple big weeks lately. Most notably, or not most notably, but most recently, the Falcons last week, where he put up 3 touchdowns against the Chargers, who just had a back from substantial injured Big Ben, have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm expecting Cam Newton to be able to have a big day against them. And then also a QB, Josh Freeman versus New Orleans. He already played them this year, had 420 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I think it's pretty safe to say Josh Freeman is looking at a pretty big week this weekend. He could probably get himself inside the top 12 at the quarterback position. And then on the running backs, Jamal Charles was Oakland. Charles was a monster last week. Took the I don't know if it was the opening handoff, but on the opening drive, he went 80 yards for a touchdown, and then doubled his total yardage with 165 with his touchdown. He gets the Raiders next week, and they've been one of the worst teams in football pretty much all year long, and he's easily has a chance for another 100 and a touchdown, if not more. CJ Spiller now once again has the full workload with Fred Jackson done for the year. Anytime you have CJ Spiller and a full workload, I start him. I don't even care if it's Seattle Seahawks. The kid's way too dynamic, and if the Bills know it's good for them, which they might not actually, they're a pretty dumb team. Hate the Bills. Go Dolphins. They'd be smart to use CJ Spiller as much as possible. He's just way too dynamic. And speaking of dynamic players, Bryce Brown versus Cincinnati. Bryce Brown was a huge bust last week, and if anybody played playoffs last week and got their due to him, he must have screwed you. I have him on a couple leagues. Luckily, it was the week before playoffs, and I've gotten into most of the leagues, into the playoffs in most of my leagues. And Bryce Brown, I'm still going to be depending on if I need him this week. Cincinnati, it's actually the Thursday night game tonight, so hopefully this video gets up in time. Cincinnati does not have the best run defense. They're much better against the pass. And Bryce Brown was fantasy gold for the 2 weeks prior last week, so don't give up on him just yet. Start Bryce Brown this week. And then on to wide receivers, Ray Alexander was a monster last week, catching 2 touchdowns. One of them was just a beautiful. He had a couple of nice catches in general. I think Denario Alexander is must-start material going forward. It was against the Steelers. He had that big game, one of the best pass defenses. So like I said, Denario Alexander to me is must-start material. A wide receiver 2 at minimum, possibly even wide receiver 1 material, if he can keep this stuff going. And then Josh Gordon has a great matchup versus Washington. He had a season-high 12 targets last week, which is a great. It wasn't the hugest gain, only 86 yards, but the amount of targets he had, it's just awesome to see that he's getting that involved in the offense. And against the Redskins, who have a pretty sketchy secondary, he's easily got a chance for 100 yards and a touchdown. And then Tampa Bay, Mike Williams. If Josh Freeman's going to have a big day, it can't all be Vincent Jackson, so look for maybe Mike Williams to get involved. 60 or 5 catches, 60 yards, and a score is about the area I would think. I think for him, it's all dependent on a touchdown. It's kind of been that way for him. When he scores a touchdown, he's great. When he doesn't, he's mediocre. But New Orleans, it's been the same thing all year. They give up touchdowns. And then at tight end, Dennis Pitta has a great matchup versus Denver. They're not very good against tight ends. They're much better against wide receivers. So look for Dennis Pitta to have back-to-back touchdowns, which I think would be the first time this season. And then the sit-em side of the list, Tony Romo with Pittsburgh. Most notably here is the possible outage of Dez Bryant, so make sure you pay attention to that. If Dez Bryant is out, Tony Romo is a must-sit to me. If Dez Bryant's in, I'm still pretty worried about him. I do start him in one of my leagues, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to replace him or not due to the lack of good QBs available on the waiver wire. People just seem to be stashing them. But I might have to just go with someone anyways, because Tony Romo's got a pretty scary matchup versus the Steelers, despite how Philip Rivers did against them last week. And then Robert Griffin, he might be hurt, so be careful there. He had that big knee injury. I'm sure you've heard of that. If you listen or watch football, you hear about RG3 every week and how he hurt his knee. So if you're starting RG3, you always have to pay attention to the situation there. And even if he does play, a lot of his talent and production comes from his mobility. So if he's got a hurt knee, I don't know how mobile he's going to be and how effective he's going to be. So even if he is playing, I might want to sit RG3 this week. And then at running back, Frank Gore versus New England, back-to-back touchdown games, and another 1,000-yard season from one of my favorite running backs in the entire league. But I think it's time to put him on the bench. New Orleans is a terrible matchup for running backs. They actually have a pretty good defense against the running game right now, and running backs tend to not get too many opportunities because teams are playing from behind, and I can still see San Fran doing that despite how good they are. New England just looks amazing right now. Mike LaShore versus Arizona. Mike LaShore does have close to 700 yards in only 11 games this season, but his yards per carry is only 3.7 yards. I'm not really liking that. He's kind of dependent upon touchdowns, and I'm not too sure he's going to get one this week. Arizona is a pretty terrible team, but their defense is the better part about it. So he might get the chance just due to Detroit moving the ball in the air, but I still don't like the home run potential for Mike LaShore this week. And then D'Angelo Williams, don't get too excited about this guy. He did have over 100 yards and a touchdown last week. Don't see that happening again. It's going to be all Cam Newton this week against the San Diego Chargers. They have a pretty decent run defense anyways. They are a little banged up, or actually pretty banged up. Still, I am not one to trust D'Angelo Williams, so don't buy into what he did last week. It's not going to happen again. Kenny Britt versus the Jets. Kenny Britt had a great week last week in terms of yardage. Couldn't get a touchdown, but was still very effective. And even without Darrelle Revis, the Jets are actually winning games lately, and it can be credited to their defense largely. And I think their defense is going to be really stiff against Britt. Cromartie's playing very, very well in place of Darrelle Revis, and that's probably going to be on Kenny Britt. So I'd be worried about him. I do not think he's going to be able to crack 100 yards, and I don't think he's going to catch a touchdown. And then Stevie Johnson versus Seattle. This one's pretty easy. The Seahawks want to have one of the best secondary units in the league, and Johnson seems to either have decent yardage with no touchdown or a touchdown and terrible yardage. He's only cracked double-digit points like 4 times, and it's like 11, 11, 12, and like 15. Other than that, he's like 7, 8, and 9 almost every week. So if that's what you want, that's what you can expect. About 7, 8, 9 for points. Indy, Ty Hilton, I'm a little worried about. Houston has got ripped twice this year, but both times were elite QBs. And as good as Andrew Luck is, he's not elite. So I don't really know if he's going to be able to hook up with Ty Hilton for a touchdown this week. I'm still starting Reggie Wayne, but I'm not starting Ty Hilton and Donnie Avery in any leagues that I'm in personally. And then Antonio Brown versus Dallas. Antonio Brown had a rare touchdown in his career last week. It was a 1-yard pass. I don't like his chances to do that again versus Dallas. They have a pretty decent pass defense, pretty good pass rush. Well, I guess that's just DeMarcus Ware. The pass rush is pretty bad besides DeMarcus Ware. But overall, pretty good secondary. Not liking Antonio Brown's chances of having another touchdown. So if you want double digits from him, you're pretty much banking on a 100-yard game, and I don't think odds of that happening either. And then last pick of the sit-em list is Brandon Pettigrew versus Arizona. I had trouble finding a tight end that struck out to me. The position has just been volatile all year long. So just in case you forgot, Brandon Pettigrew is probably going to be out this week with an ankle injury, so he's not probably going to be in against the Cardinals. So I'd be looking at Tony Scheffler to maybe fill the role there. Tony Scheffler is a bit of a touchdown hawk anyways throughout the past 2 years. And that's it, guys. I've talked more than long enough. We're at 8 minutes now. Like I said, Koopafantasy.com. Read my articles there if you want. Like, subscribe to my videos here on YouTube. And most importantly, find me on Twitter. That is @Blackie with an IE_Mike. Koopa Fantasy is the handle if you want to search it that way. Anyway, guys, much love. Good luck this week. It's probably playoffs for you. I hope my picks do not steer you wrong. If you have any complaints or any arguments to make about the picks, I will more than happily accept them and weigh what you have to say. My mind is not a brick wall. I am not easily swayed, but I can be swayed with a good, well-made argument. So, guys, hit me up, Koopafantasy.com. @Blackie_Mike on Twitter, and like, subscribe to my videos. Fantasy out.